Hello and good day. Welcome to the Super Good Camping Podcast. My name is Pamela.
I'm Tim.
And we are from supergoodcamping.com. We are here because we're on a mission to inspire other families to enjoy camping adventures such as we have with our kids. Today's guests are a couple of fairly prolific fishermen with great senses of humor, as shown by the fact that they refer to themselves as a couple of idiots who adventure fish in Canada. Please welcome Ben and Adam from Paddleheads. Hey, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Guys.
Yes, thank you.
No, thank you. We can do the Canadian thing where we just thank you, no, thank you.
Oh,
No, really,
No,
thank
sorry.
you.
So, right out of the gate, just because I don't know the Paddleheads origin story, how did you guys meet?
We met through YouTube. We actually each had our own channel. We were both creating camping and fishing videos. We had both started around the same time. And I found one of Adam's videos and I watched the entire thing, even though he caught no fish in the video. And I decided just to reach out to him and messaged him on Instagram. We started chatting, and it turned out that we were both a couple of metalheads who both played music. He's a drummer and I'm a bassist. And traditionally, drummers and bassists get along pretty well.
Right.
At least the ones in the good bands seem to.
Yeah.
So, we really hit it off. We had a lot of similarities that way. Although he grew up in the Toronto area, I was in Kingston area. We grew up, very far apart. There was a lot of similarities. So we just kept talking and shooting videos together, doing trips together. And we kind of realized that, we're putting out two of the same video. When we're on the trip together, you're just getting kind of two different aspects of the same trip. So we thought, why not team up, save ourselves some work, and create videos together.
Yeah, I would just add to that it became obvious pretty quick that Ben and I, the way we work on our videos together, we can be very critical, and there's pros and cons to that. But we very quickly learned, like I was aware of my strengths and weaknesses, as was Ben, and they complemented each other very well. So it was kind of like a yin and yang thing. And we felt like together we were actually able to create content more aligned with what we both had in mind, the kind of stuff that we wanted to make, and the type of trips we wanted to do. It was very much aligned. And so it was kind of just a natural fit.
And share the workload. As I'm sure you two know, it's a lot of work.
It's been huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that most of the consumers of content realize what it takes to make that content. I have so much tripping stuff stashed in my computer that it's so daunting. Every time I pull it out, I look at it because it's like, yay, my kids, whatever. But to splice it together, it's just like, oh no, I gotta look at another podcast episode, whatever.
So what kind of trips do you guys like to do? You mentioned you both enjoy the same types of trips, but what kind of trips are those?
So we've learned in time, we like slow trips. Not that we don't like doing big trips covering big distance, but it's definitely about the fishing for both Ben and I. That is our priority. And quite often we're planning trips based on a specific fish. We're looking for a fish. And so we'll kind of go wherever we have to get that fish. But yeah, we often will just base camp and we'll stay in the same spot for 2 or 3 nights, whatever. And we've done trips where we're moving between spots. But yeah, I would say easygoing. We like to push ourselves. We've done some pretty big portages in Algonquin. We're not afraid. We just know that we'd rather be fishing.
Cool. And you do. So I have watched a decent amount of your content, so I know a bunch of things. But you like to do. I see you guys in canoes. I also see you in kayaks. Do either of you have a preference?
Yes.
That's kind of where we both we have opposite preferences for sure. So I think that it helps the channel. It helps bring more variety into the channel. I definitely prefer the kayak for fishing. I understand its limitations. You can't portage a fishing kayak. You know, the decent ones are 80 to 90, 100 pounds. So you're not taking that down a 1 kilometer portage easily. So, but I love the fishing kayak just for its stability, its comfort. Most of the time I'm standing up when I'm fishing in the fishing kayak, and I just love it. It makes more sense for musky fishing too. I'm a big fan of musky angling, and they're a big fish. So you need to be able to handle those big fish, and the stability of the kayak allows you to lift a big muskie out of the water, or also to be able to perform certain actions. You know, when you're fishing in a canoe, you're sitting down, and unless you fish a lot, you don't realize how limited you are when you're sitting down and fishing. You can't perform certain actions with the fishing bait, and with musky fishing, you got to do like a figure 8 beside the boat. Anyways, there's special techniques where it's better to be standing for fishing. So the fishing kayak, I love it. I also love that we can be fishing the same waters, and if Adam's in a different fishing kayak, we don't have to be in the same place. He can go fish over there if he wants to. I can go fish over there if I want to. So that's a great thing. Whereas with the canoe, we have to agree on, yeah, that looks like a good spot. Let's focus there.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate because I don't own a kayak, but we're brand ambassadors for Frontenac Outfitters, and they've been a big supporter of our channel for a long time. And so we've had a few opportunities to get out, and they'll let me borrow a fishing kayak. So yeah, Ben and I will both be in fishing kayaks. We'll try and plan those trips so there's no portages. But like Ben says, there's definitely advantages to a fishing kayak, but there's something about a canoe. I can't think of a better term, so I'm going to say there's something romantic about it. It's just like the feeling of being in a canoe. I really like that. And actually, the 2 times, well, this isn't true. This is pretty much a big lie, but I've lost a few things off of fishing kayaks. And so I've decided that, you know, it's the fishing kayak's fault, not mine. So I'll look for excuses, you know, but they have their advantages for sure. But with the tripping and the portaging and the camping stuff, the canoe is definitely a way to go. And because we now have so much experience doing that, we've really kind of dialed in like what we need in the boat and the kind of stuff we bring and how we fish together. I would imagine if people were watching us fish, maybe it doesn't come across in the videos, but like from afar, Ben and I are like casting over each other all the time. Our lines are crossing and we're always watching each other's bait. And so it's rare that we get tangled, but we've just gotten like really comfortable fishing out of a canoe together. So we make it work, right? I know there's a lot of people that don't like fishing out of a canoe, so they're missing out. That's what I think.
Yeah, you can't beat the portability of a canoe, right? Being able to hit those back lakes and those less fishing pressured areas, you can't beat a canoe for that.
And it's much prettier than a kayak. I'm sorry, it just is. Cleaner, smoother, just the lines. Yeah.
I'm just curious about the fishing kayak. I can't visualize standing up in a kayak. But how is it that stable that you can stand up in it?
So the hull is kind of like a pontoon style when you look at most of them, the very stable ones. There are some fishing kayaks that are not very stable. So certain people's experiences may differ. But in the fishing kayaks that I've used, like from Jackson Kayak, I can stand on 1 foot comfortably in that fishing kayak. You feel it go, like it starts to kind of sit on edge, but it'll hold that edge. And unless your head goes over the gunnels, the side of the kayak, you're fine. If you just keep your head above your belly button, you're golden. Now, I have seen somebody fall off, Zach from Frontenac Outfitters. You know, if you're not careful and you go to try and set the hook and there's nothing there, well, you may be I've seen him, throw his balance off and fall off the fishing kayak. It does happen. But, yeah, you just be careful.
Just for the record, I'm totally leaving that part in.
Great.
Sorry, Zach.
He'll appreciate that.
Ben has that footage. Maybe he can get it to you and you can include it in your final video.
That'd be swell.
He's never used it.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I personally have never fished. I think I've been in a kayak once. and I've never fished from one. I fished from canoes. It's all fine and dandy. Although that said, I've got a 14-foot Keewaydin that it's like, I guess it's pack boat style. Like I'm sitting in the bottom of it. Just paddling it terrifies me that I'm going over. So I would never even think about trying to fish out of that thing.
I've paddled one of those boats. They're super nice. I've paddled one of those Keewaydins, the solo boats. Ben, you remember the trip we did with Justin? I was paddling that solo boat. It was
our first trip in Algonquin. Yeah.
Yeah. They're nice little boats. I really like those solo boats. It's super cool. Like you have the same portability that you do, I guess independence that you would in a fishing kayak, but all the space that you have in a canoe, right?
I remember you mentioning how you had to get used to it though. When we first got in that canoe, I remember you saying it felt tippy at first.
Well, yes, because of the hull, it's not as stable as what I was used to. Like my fishing canoe up until just recently, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit, but my fishing canoe is like this big old Canadian Tire heavy plastic boat, which I can comfortably stand in because it's so wide and the bottom's so flat. So I was very comfortable in like a nice stable canoe, but that Keewaydin was the first time that I was kind of paddling a real boat kind of by myself, or a real canoe anyways. And yeah, it took a little while, but it got super comfortable. We were on an Algonquin trip, so there wasn't much choice. It was like, this is what we're doing. So I got okay with it after a little while.
Yeah, same here. I think the very first time I tried to get into it, I went over, and then there was at least one other really close call where I think I just reached out, not used to that kind of tumble home, right? Like I'm expecting I'm going a little farther out, and it was like, oh, trap. That was close to being wet again. But boy,
Tim, you said you fished out of a kayak before?
No, I think
you haven't. What about you, Pamela?
One before. I've fished out of, like, we've got a what is it? Souris River, Quetico, 17-footer. It's got, and you just mentioned the flat bottom. It's very, very flat on the bottom. It's stable as all get out. Like you could, you can party in that thing, and it's not going over. It doesn't matter. Ballast made a big difference. So I filled up, the what are they called? The float boxes at either end of that Keewaydin. I filled them up with water. That totally changed how it behaved.
Oh, you can do that?
Well, I'm sure you're not supposed to, but I did.
Okay.
It's mine. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Nobody can tell me what to do.
I didn't have any ballast with me, man. But it added enough ballast that it did. It made it be... I was far more comfortable with the paddling. I'm sure over time it'll be fine, but I'm used to big, stable beasts. It was a
Quick little tip with that, Tim, something that I've learned from a friend of ours over the year. If you use like a 20-liter dry bag, fill it up with water and just have it sitting in the bow of the canoe, like hooked around the grab handle, that will put enough weight in the front of the boat that it can help with stability, especially in like windy conditions. I do that often when I'm fishing solo out of my big canoe.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Little tip for you there.
That's great. So just to double back a little bit, so what's the other than trying to half the workload and not publish double the material, what else, what's the ultimate sort of goal of Paddleheads? What are you trying to do with your brand?
I think encourage people to get out and fish and explore more areas. It's kind of, I mean, the same as a lot of these YouTubers is basically to try and inspire people to get out there, give it a shot, and to share stories of our trips and hope that, people can learn from those stories. Yeah, I think our goal is mostly just to inspire and educate when we can. We see a lot of people going tripping in the backcountry, and there's not a lot of fishing rods going with people. And we can understand that it seems like it's a pain to bring a fishing rod and all of the tackle that you need. But when you can dial it in and figure it out, it really adds to a trip, and it can make for some amazing memories. There's something very rewarding about fishing when you get into it. Yeah. I don't know. What would you say, Adam?
A lot of like content creators or YouTubers in this like fishing, camping, paddling space. I know this is the case for us or for myself and probably Ben too. But I think it comes from a place of inspiration. Like we were inspired by somebody to do this thing. And so it almost feels like this obligation, like because you want to share that with other people that might not have those opportunities or that person in their life to inspire them. Because like Ben said, like the camping and the paddling, like that alone is or can be such like a life altering experience. But like for us, there's something about fishing, especially like you have a goal, like I said, you've got a fish in mind, like you're imagining it before you go out for the trip. Like I can see myself, I'm holding this fish. I cannot wait for that moment. And like all of the what is Kevin misadventures that happens like between starting the trip and getting to that point just makes that whole experience when you finally get to like hold that fish so much more rewarding. And so there's something special about fishing, in my opinion, that just really adds to these trips that are like so awesome by themselves anyways. But so yeah, we were inspired, and we want to give other people that same feeling, that same opportunity.
Yeah, we see also on this flip side, we see a lot of anglers that don't enjoy camping or they don't take advantage of camping, and they, we hope to open their eyes to this side of things too. That you can get way better fishing if you just go a couple portages in, and you can make some amazing memories doing these trips trying to get these fish.
Well, and so speaking of which, without giving away your favorite lakes, at least not while we're recording, but afterwards, where do you guys like to fish? Do you have any sort of like, Kawartha Highlands, or do you have some crown land in central Ontario, or do you like to fish all the things so that you can do muskie, you can do bass, you can do whatever?
We have a couple places that we focus for sure. Like we have our patterns, you could say, but we do enjoy exploring new areas, especially when we hear about certain species of fish or, the type of fishing that we could experience. And sometimes we ask people, like we'll get suggestions from Kevin Callan. We'll email him and ask him for some tips on where we should go. So,
yeah, Ben is kind of out in the Kingston area, so he spends a lot of time fishing those areas. I live in the Kawartha Lakes region, so I spend a lot of time there fishing. And yeah, over the years we've found our spots that we go back to for one reason or another. Usually it's because the fishing's good. But for sure we like to explore and try new places as well. And that's part of the fun of it, right? Is when you're going somewhere new and you have these expectations of kind of what you're looking for it. Either it happens or it doesn't. And either way, there's a lot to gain from that. But yeah, we've got some lakes. It's going to cost you a lot, Tim. It's nothing personal. Maybe we can chat later about spots. We're thinking of setting up like a big pot, and if we can get enough money, we just want lots of money. We'll tell everybody all the secret spots, but we'll have to be millionaires first, right, Ben?
Yeah, certainly.
That was a conversation we had.
Yep.
So Ben mentioned muskie as being one of his favorite fish. Adam, do you have one?
Favorite fish? I feel like I want to say bass, just because I've had so much fun bass fishing, and it's the fish that most people cut their teeth on, so to speak. But I've been fortunate to have some really awesome experiences, not only by myself but with my kids, and so I would say bass probably will always hold a very special place in my heart, just because it's so fun, and it's way more accessible than something like muskie. You can go bass fishing for $15. Now that's Kevin Callan and Speedo Man's opinion. It might cost a few more dollars if you ask us, but not much. You really don't need much to get out there and catch bass. So yeah, I love bass fishing.
Cool. Damn, I just forgot what my question was. Oh, kids. So what you obviously you two, we'll let everybody know about all your channels towards the end. You two fish together a lot, but do you take your families and do camping or fishing or that kind of outdoor adventure stuff?
Yeah, I do for sure. I don't. So I've just got this weird personal thing. I don't put my kids in any of our videos. My opinion on that is I'm leaving it up to them until they're old enough to decide whether or not they want to be on the internet permanently forever. But that doesn't stop me from taking them, and I just don't record those trips. Just this year, actually, this summer, I try to get at least once or twice with them every year. We do like a backcountry trip. And this year was super fun. I took them, my wife sat this one out. It was just the kids and I, but I took them to kind of my favorite spot, which is this really cool big island campsite on this like beautiful lake. There's nobody ever there. And so the kids and I did a bunch of bass fishing. Actually, the day we were packing up, they're walking around the campsite and they're like, "Oh, we're bored, Dad. What should we do?" I'm like, "Go get your fishing rods and go fishing." And they're good anglers. They're only 7. They're still little, but I take them fishing a lot. Like I live very close to a lake, and so they're like rock bass experts. So I just said, "Take your fishing rods and go fishing." So I'm like packing up the campsite, and fortunately we're on the island. I know they can't go far, and I'm like putting the tent away, and I hear, "It's a big one, it's a big one." So I like drop everything, I'm running across the island. I get there, and my daughter, she's like holding up, "Dad, I got one." So that kind of stuff for me is like so special. I absolutely love that. It's like why I started doing this, and the fact that like I get to enjoy those experiences with my kids now. I've had my wife out a few times as well. She's a little less enthusiastic, and it's primarily based on her experiences. And we'll get to that later. Actually, I'd love to tell a story about that. But yeah, as often as possible. I mean, in between work and just regular family life, and then the channel and all those other things, it's hard to like get all of that in. But I make an effort at least once or twice a year to get the family out camping.
Sweet. How about you, Ben?
Well, I don't have a little family of my own, but I've been trying to convince my mom to get out camping with me. I think I might be able to get her out on a trip without any portages. And yeah, and I just recently started taking my girlfriend out. She's from Brazil. She came to Canada just last year. So I've been showing her as much of the camping as I can and trying to convince her into winter camping, but she keeps calling that a scam. So I don't think that'll happen. But I got to take her to Algonquin this year, and she was an absolute champ in the canoe. I've had her in the canoe a couple times before, and she picked it up really quick, and she kept asking me, like, teach me more, show me more. So I'm teaching her how to do draws and crossbow draws, and eventually, like, we'd be fishing together. She's like, "I just want to paddle." And I'm like, "Okay." She's like, "Let me paddle you around the lake." I'm like, "Okay, I want to go fishing over there." And she's paddling from the front of the canoe and getting me over there, no problem. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun getting her out. She's been really good in the canoe and on the portage trails and with camping. So that's been a lot of fun.
Ben, can you explain the why she thinks it's a scam to winter camping?
It's too cold for her, you know. She's from Brazil, so she's like nice temperature to her is like 35 degrees Celsius.
I remember you saying she didn't believe that anyone could be comfortable doing that.
Yeah, she doesn't believe it.
I think that's hilarious.
When I took her out to Algonquin, I had her in a -18 sleeping bag. And she was still, she had layers on underneath the sleeping bag too.
And this was not winter camping, right?
This was not. No, this was August.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody, that's for sure.
Well, I couldn't do Brazil because I don't know. I run at about, I'm run a little hotter than most people. I would just melt. Like I gave up wearing shorts like 3 weeks ago. Like, you know, it's
wow.
No. Yeah. not for this guy. Adam, tell us your story about your wife and camping.
Yes.
Oh, so yeah, the first time I took her out backcountry camping was in Algonquin. This was probably 2018, I want to say. And I didn't have much experience fishing or backcountry camping, really. Like, I'd been out like a dozen times, and she agreed to come. So we learned a couple things that first weekend. One is both of us have a sensitivity to DEET. So we learned that the hard way. And I'll just say this. We learned that, I don't know if you're familiar with what that means, but for us, if we use DEET, even like a small amount, we both experience like nausea, but on the other side of your body. I'm not sure how to exactly describe that. So all at the same time. And so this happened to both of us in the middle of the night. We woke up and it's in the middle of like this torrential downpour and thunderstorm. So it's like the worst conditions, and both of us are like, oh, we gotta go now. So we're like laughing. We're out just in the storm in the middle of the night laughing, like everything coming out of everywhere. It was like, that was her first experience. And somehow I convinced her to come out with Ben and I, actually. This was only like the second time Ben and I had done like a paddle trip together. And so I dragged her along with us. She came willingly, but we were on an island site and we knew there was a storm coming on the Saturday. So we kind of set up some tarps. We were preparing for rain. And so, I don't know, we were kind of hanging out. It was an easygoing day. And we kind of saw the storm coming, but from across the lake, which was really cool. You could see, I don't know if you've ever seen that, but there's like a wall of rain. You can see the clouds rolling across the lake. And as the storm got closer, the wind started like getting pretty gusty. So like, okay, this is going to be like a wind rain storm. And then the lightning and thunder started cracking. The wind started picking up. And at this point, like all the tarps we had set up to protect ourselves from the rain are just like flapping around, not attached to anything anymore. And the rain was coming down so hard that it created like this flash flood in our campsite. So now we've got like this little river going underneath the tent that my wife and I are sleeping in with all of our dry stuff. The wind is so strong that I'm like holding on to the tarp that's over top of the hammock that Ben's sleeping in, just trying to like keep the tarp over the hammock because all of his stuff's in there. And the wind became so intense, like all of us were like very uneasy. This feels like
scrambling.
Yeah.
So,
and of course, my wife's freaking out. I'm holding onto the tarp, and Ben's filming, like he's got the camera. And at one point, it got so intense that my wife, she just yelled, "Have a tree!" Which, of course, like in a thunderstorm, is probably not good advice. But in that moment, the wind seemed like the bigger threat, and so I don't know. After that, it was kind of a blur. The whole storm passed over. Everything cleared up. And just the site was a disaster.
Yeah.
Like, it tore everything apart. And like I said, my tent, fortunately, it's a good tent. It was like sitting in this huge puddle. We picked it up and moved it. Fortunately, everything inside was dry. With Ben as well. And it was a good reminder of, the power of Mother Nature and the fact that she doesn't care about you or your stuff. And we learned that actually on our paddle out. As we were leaving the next day, we saw this like group of boats. So there were cottages on this lake, and there was a group of boats kind of sitting at this in front of this cottage. And as we approached it, we realized the entire cottage had burnt down. So we assumed that maybe it was hit by lightning or something like that. We're not sure. Fortunately, it didn't seem to affect the forest around it. But it was just like, wow, we got out of that pretty okay.
When we were in the middle of it and the wind picked up, it had gone from almost like 0 to 100 so fast that I legit thought that we had like a mini tornado drop on top of us.
Yeah,
it was so strong. And you can see in the video footage, the trees are just going side to side. And yeah, Mother Nature didn't let up after the storm. I guess you forgot about this, Adam. The bugs were horrendous afterwards.
Yeah.
There weren't that many bugs before the storm, and afterwards they were so bad.
Well, probably like us, they were just glad to still be alive. So they're like, we better. So they all came out and they were feeding.
Well, and you can't use DEET, Adam. So what do you do in that situation?
Over the years, I've gotten away from using the insect sprays and the lotions. I just use like bug jackets now. And same with shirts. Like, I don't like wearing sunscreen. I'm not like, I don't know, I want to say a weirdo, but that might offend somebody. But like, I just don't like all the oil and the grease all over my skin and stuff. And so like these kinds of UV shirts, I love them. But they're good. They help keep the bugs off. They help keep the sun and stuff like that off. So that's kind of what I do now.
Cool. I've been thinking, noodling about the inspiring people to get out there. So if you were to say, here's a nice little kit to put together to go out, or I don't know. Like, I know that Ontario Parks does a learn to fish program where they lend you a rod and a hook and a bobber and whatever. What would you say? What would you recommend for somebody to put together to get themselves out there?
Well, we can't speak to the whole the lend a rod thing. We've never done that. But for a fishing rod, if you're actually considering fishing and you think you're going to be doing it for a while, and you don't want to buy 5 fishing rods, we recommend Ugly Sticks. There's a certain brand, and not sponsored. They're called Ugly Sticks. They're marketed as being one of the toughest rods. And I personally have never broken an Ugly Stick, and we take them on all of our trips. And we are not always super easy on our gear. And they really stand the test of time. And as for a reel, you could probably find an Ugly Stick with a reel on it, and that will get you through enough seasons. I wouldn't worry about upgrading the reel right away. Do some research on YouTube, though, about learning about how to put fishing line on your fishing rod. There's common mistakes that people make, and it can lead to a disaster. So I highly recommend that. And as far as fishing lures, like just grab yourself a couple of simple, easy fishing lures, some of the classics, a spinner bait, some spoons, and just get out there and start trying.
Yeah, I would just add to that, if someone is not sure whether they are going to like fishing, it's something they just are interested in trying, there are much less expensive combos. So you get a rod and a reel with fishing line on it at, like Canadian Tire, something like that. They'll go on sale. You can pick them up for 15, 20, 40 bucks sometimes for the whole thing. If you find a good sale, you can get them pretty inexpensively. That's not going to do well in time. The thing that usually fails first on those cheaper combos is the fishing line. It just turns into a big tangled mess, and you're like, well, this is useless now. But it's certainly good enough to get you started. And I mean, you could go as simple as just like any hook and a worm with a bobber or a little split shot weight just above the hook on the line. You just pinch it on. It's super simple. Throw it out there with a bobber. You will. That's what. There's a couple lures or baits that I would say will pretty much guarantee fish if there are fish in the lake. A worm is one of them. You just gotta wait. But yeah, with what Ben said, you can easily pick up a few pretty inexpensive lures, inline spinners, spoons, that kind of thing. But YouTube is a huge resource because, some people have people in their lives that fish and that can teach them those kinds of things. Many people don't. I didn't. I learned how to do everything I know now from YouTube. And that's just the generation I grew up in. But there's tons of resources out there. So if you're not sure how to tie your lure on or anything like that, all of that information is available on YouTube, and pretty quickly you can be out on the water catching fish.
Yeah, don't worry about the electronics when you first start out. I wouldn't even worry about fish finders and all that stuff. You know, fishing can get as complicated as you want it to be, but it can also be very simple. So don't overcomplicate it, and mostly just get out there and see if you enjoy it. See if you have the patience for it. And one thing that I want to add, just because the common complaint I hear from people is, well, I always get a bird's nest. I always get a big tangle. I get a big knot in my fishing line all the time. For beginning fishing line, I would recommend braided fishing line. It doesn't tangle as easily. If you've ever touched a fishing rod, you'll probably know that a lot of the fishing line, when you start pulling it off, it has a memory and it has this coil to it. That's usually where your bird's nests, your knots are going to come from. And braided line doesn't do that. It's much easier to tie knots. So for beginners, start with braided line. You'll have a much easier experience, much better experience.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can buy combos with braided line on them. Usually when you buy a combo, it has monofilament on it. So that might be a good exercise for somebody to learn how to spool their own reel. It's not that hard. It does have to be done properly. I would just say on that though, if that's the type of thing you're going to do, make sure you're not careless with the fishing line. That's probably one of the biggest problems with anglers, and the biggest issue that we see out is just people leave fishing line around. So if you're going to be pulling fishing line off of a reel, best way to dispose of it would be to coil it up and wrap a little bit of tape around it or something like that, just to keep it bunched. And I'm not I know there are some recycling programs in some areas. I would suggest people look into that. But yeah, fishing line can be pretty dangerous for wildlife and that sort of thing. So it's not the type of thing you want to just be all willy-nilly about, to use a technical term.
Cool. Yeah, we're big on sustainability and eco-friendliness, and so do you guys have any tips around that?
In terms of
stuff like catch and release versus eating all of your catch. Are there different? Like I know, when you've got your license, for sake of argument, it's conservation license. This type of fish, you have a certain range of size or weight that is a keeper, isn't. But sometimes those ranges are pretty large. What would be? I don't know. Pull it out of your butt, pick a fish, and say,
don't do that. That's gross.
2 pounds and up is good to keep, right? But by the time you hit 4.5 pounds, that's an old lunker that's kicking around and has been producing other fish. Let that guy keep doing that part of the job. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Generally speaking, once you start learning your species of fish, you'll start to realize, what is a big fish. Sometimes people don't realize that this sunfish that they caught is actually a massive sunfish, or this bass they caught is actually probably a six-year-old bass. So we would always say, put away the biggest fish. We never keep the biggest fish. They also generally contain the most heavy metals because they're consuming all of the smaller fish, and it just accumulates over time, also because of their age. So we generally don't eat the biggest fish that we catch. We like to put them back because they're also the breeders. They're the ones that are going to keep providing fish for us to keep enjoying for years to come. And we generally just try not to take anything that we're not going to eat immediately. We're not the kind of anglers that go out fishing to fill our freezers. We kind of believe against that. We don't think that's right. There's nothing wrong with keeping a couple fish in your freezer, but we know some people we've heard stories of people who go over the limit. You should definitely be a little bit conservative and just catch what you're going to eat. Don't waste meat if you can. I would also, just as far as pollution and sustainability, people will go out and get fishing line and they think, oh, I'm not going to catch a bass that's heavier than 10 pounds. I only need 10-pound fishing line. That's not really how you judge fishing line strength. And I always like to just go a lot heavier than I need to. I never want to break off on a fish. I never want to have a fish lure stuck in a fish's mouth. So I always oversize my line. I'm not really worried about them being picky about your fishing line and seeing your fishing line. Most of them don't care.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it is really important as far as sustainability goes to make sure that you are aware and familiar with the regulations in the area that you're going to be fishing, there are, 21 fishing management zones in Ontario. And so depending on where you are, the rules can be very different about what kind of fish you can keep, when you can fish for them. And then some places have slot sizes, so you can only keep certain fish within a certain size. And so it's important to have tools like a measuring tape to make sure that you can check that. I would say as long as you are acting within the law that the regulators have set forth based on their science and their understanding of fish populations and the health of an ecosystem, because they will change that as time goes on. If something happens to a certain species and they need to protect that, they will ban fishing in that area. So just understand the regulations very well. Make sure you understand the slot sizes and the size of fish that you can keep, and this is something that I'm still trying to understand, but I think it's called a possession limit, which means that just because you caught 2 fish this day and 2 fish this day doesn't necessarily mean that you can have them all in your possession at home at the same time. I'm not an expert on that. It's not, like I said, I'm still learning, but the basis of what I'm getting at here is understand the fishing regulations, read them, understand them in the zone that you're going to be fishing, and that will help to protect the species as well, because that's what those are there for.
And favorite way to prepare fish? Like, do you grill it over the fire? Do you pan fry it? Do you poach it?
Deep fried.
It's the simplest and easiest way to get a good tasting meal for sure. But baking fish can be so delicious with take a brook trout, drizzle it with some maple syrup, some salt, pepper, throw it in the oven. Yeah, bake it up. It can be very delicious.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, not that I expect this, but did you guys watch the trip we did most recently with Kevin? Okay, I only bring it up.
I saw your shorts about it, and I will watch it and bust a gut and stuff. I'm sure, because that's how it goes with you guys.
I only ask because usually in the past we've done fishing competitions with Kevin and Ashley, which is super fun. But this time we did kind of like a bit of a cook-off. And for the meal that Ben and I were doing, we were depending on catching walleye to make our meal. And so fortunately, between Kevin and Ashley and myself, not Ben, but
thanks for rubbing it in.
Yeah, we caught fish to make the meal. And so I almost feel like I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but maybe I will, just because it's worth sharing. We made this. I made this. I say we a lot. Like I really do feel like Ben and I are like just a singularity with just one thing. But obviously that's just me. So I'm gonna, anyways. I cooked this meal. We did come up with the idea together.
Thank you.
So I prepared this meal. We deep fried filleted fish, and then I made this sauce. It was maple bacon bourbon, like white gravy, and then we put the battered fried fish fillet on a waffle and drizzled that sauce over top of it. So it was like chicken and waffles, but we called it northern fried walleye waffles, and it was actually pretty good. There was obviously some limitations because we were cooking on a hot stove. And yeah, so it was a little challenging, but the meal itself was really good. So that was an interesting way to eat fish. I've never even had chicken and waffles. So to eat fish on it was interesting, but it was good. So, something, we plan on putting a recipe out eventually. So if anyone's interested, it's worth trying.
Yeah, the sauce sounds amazing.
Yeah, the waffle's a little weird. I don't get the whole.
Yeah. The waffle. Yeah.
Not for this guy.
That's it for us for today. Thank you so much to Ben and Adam from Paddleheads for joining us. And please do check them out on YouTube. You're on Instagram and all the other things as well?
Instagram, Facebook.
TikTok.
TikToks. Well, of course, yeah. You guys have great shorts. I will absolutely say that. You're
Thank you.
With that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, so please do check them out on all the things and reach out to us on all the things as well. And you can email us at hi@supergoodcamping.com. That's hi@supergoodcamping.com. And we will talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.